Hi, everybody. I am Andra Annette, and welcome to this week's session of Healing from the Inside Out. And today I have a special guest who I've been pronouncing her name wrong. So don't don't hold me to what I'm about to say. It's Teresa Lacorazza. All right. Yeah, I did it. So she's with us today because I really admire what she does. So she's been through a lot of trials and tribulations in her own life, and it's her goal to really help other women get out of those limiting beliefs and really step into a life they love. So she does have a master's education and a master's in education, and she's a healing arts practitioner. So please help me welcome Teresa. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So I saw that there was some history that you had some trouble with health,
Yes.
and that you do have children and stuff. So tell me a little bit about that and how you wound up doing what you're doing now. Because whenever we're out there helping someone, it's usually connected to something that we experienced in our own life,
Right.
and we feel like we have to help someone else because it's difficult to get through, right?
Yes, 100%. So I'll start out by telling my cancer story. I am a breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2021. No one in my family has it. So there was no family history there. It was a very, very big shock to me and as well as my family. And through that process, I developed a gratitude practice because there was so many days that I was scared and anxious, overwhelmed, sad, all these different emotions. I rode a roller coaster of emotions despite having a good prognosis. The doctor said to me, you will get beyond this. I was very lucky because I didn't need chemo, but I did need radiation. I had a partial mastectomy. They removed about 25% of my breast. And then 8 days after my surgery, my house was destroyed in Hurricane Ida. We lost 2 out of 3 floors from flooding. So I had all of this as if it wasn't bad enough that I had to deal with a cancer diagnosis. Now my house is destroyed. I was still able to live in it because the water missed my electrical blocks by about 2 inches. So we had power, so we didn't have to leave the house, thank goodness. I had one son starting college who thankfully ended up going to community college for a year. And then I had my younger son who was a senior in high school. So my oldest son was able to drive him to school and pick him up. It was like these little things. But going through that, there was so much anxiety around the surgery, around treatment, around what's going to happen. Now I'm at a higher risk for other cancers. So I had all this going through my mind, and I knew that no one is supposed to live in fear. That's just not why we're here. It's not what the universe wants. It's not what God wants. Whatever you believe in, it doesn't really matter. But we're not here to live
Both.
in. Right. It could be, yeah, it doesn't really matter, but it's not what we're here. It's not how we're supposed to live. So I developed a gratitude practice that will instantly change your energy and move your energy from a low lying energy like fear to an energy of gratitude. And it's those shifts that helped me to get through the day. And it was really important because I needed to be present. I have a husband, I have 2 kids. I needed to be present in life. I couldn't be all wrapped up in my head and living in fear for months. It just wasn't fair. So I developed this practice, and I was very lucky to. I was found by a woman who's also a practitioner, and she asked me to if I wanted to write my story. So I was published in a book. So that's another good thing that came out of cancer. I became a published author. The book was published in October of 2022, And this is the book, it's Holistic Mental Health. And I tell about my story of going through cancer, and I teach my gratitude practice in that book. So that's one little piece of what I teach with my clients. It's a very simple practice to do, and I teach that. I'm being published again in volume 2, which comes out April 16th. And in that chapter, I tell my story about how my youngest son was born premature. He almost died twice after he was born. He spent the first month of his life in the NICU. He had a blood transfusion. He had developed a hole in his lung from being on a respirator the first 3 days of his life. I wasn't allowed to touch him. Nobody was for the first 3 days. He was fed through a feeding tube. He ended up on heart medication for a year after for the first year of his life. He had so many different therapies, and it was just really, really tough. He's now 20 years old and he's in college, but it was really, really challenging. And in that time, after I did bring him home, and with all the specialists and the therapies that he was receiving, my aunt reached out to me and she said to me, T, how you doing? I'm like, how am I doing? It was like one day just kind of rolled into the next. And there was sometimes 3 days where I was still in the same pajamas because I had no idea what day it was. I was just in a very, very dark place. So she was worried about me. And she said to me, I want to gift you some sessions with my friend who's an EFT practitioner. An EFT is emotional freedom technique. I am an EFT practitioner myself. This is how I got started. And when I had my first session, I remember so distinctly doing a round of tapping and going, and my body relaxed. And I was confused for a moment because I was living in fight or flight mode, which is such a dangerous place to be health-wise. It's just not a good place to be. And for just a brief moment, I was so at peace and not stressed. And I was overwhelmed. I said, how is this happening? Why is this happening? So I worked with Holly for a long, long time. And then we had to relocate because of my husband's job. So we lost touch for a little bit, and then we picked up again. And during one of those sessions, she said to me, Teresa, this is what you're supposed to be doing. I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing? She's like, this is your calling. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And that was back in 2010. So then I started to learn and use EFT. And at the time, I was a cleanse coach with a company teaching people how to lose weight using these certain products. And when they would reach plateaus or they couldn't get over cravings, I would use EFT to help them with that. I don't do that anymore. And that just expands it into treating anxiety because it works so well. It works on spiritual pain, mental pain, physical pain. I used it because I deal with anxiety for most of my life, dealing with that. And now that I'm in menopause or going through the whole menopause thing, I get like we don't deal with enough. I've been dealing with menopause, and I noticed that all of a sudden it started back when I was 45. So that was almost 10 years, just about 10 years ago. I woke up in the middle of the night having a major anxiety attack, and I couldn't understand why. A few years ago, I was at a seminar and I was listening to a gynecologist speak, and she says, yeah, all of a sudden, you're in your 40s and boom, you start having anxiety attacks. I'm like, oh my God, absolutely. And you don't like to do the things that you used to do. And you have fear around things that you did without even thinking. Like I have a fear now around driving. I still drive, but I have all this anxiety around it. She's like, well, welcome to menopause, ladies. And I almost fell off the chair. So, EFT is great for that. And in my chapter, even though it stemmed from the anxiety that I dealt with my son, and that's how I found EFT, I do give in that chapter a small script for using EFT for anxiety. And that's really been my focus is helping women, especially middle-aged women that are somewhere on the journey with menopause. You know, it can start as early as in your 30s, and it can end as late as your early 60s. So that's a really
It
big
lasts as long as
window.
14 years it could last. I just did a menopause class because someone asked me to do it. It's not my specialty, but I'm a nurse, so I could teach anything. But people that smoke, they go into it 10 years earlier, and it can last up to 14 years. And
Yeah.
mine was a breeze. So when I hear women, I feel so terrible because when I hear women talking about all the signs and symptoms they had, I was going through something else in my life, and I had a thyroid disease. So I just assumed it was part of the thyroid. Right. So, and I was correcting all these other issues in my body. I had leaky gut and the thyroid, autoimmune. So I was just assuming that that was part of my detox product. And then all of a sudden it was done. And I was like, this isn't bad. I could do this. And then I went to the doctor and he said, no, that's menopause. I said, really? I said, is this it? And he said, yeah, this is it. I said, oh, okay.
Yeah, it definitely reacts. People react differently. Women react differently to menopause.
Absolutely.
I'm, yes, I do have heightened anxiety, but it's not anxiety that I haven't experienced before because I've had anxiety for most of my adult life. So I was like, okay, so I'm dealing with a little more anxiety. Thank goodness. A hot flash for me is it only comes out in my face. My face sweats. And like I don't have the night sweats or things like that. My gynecologist, he's like, you're really lucky. I'm like, yeah, I know. I mean, and thank goodness I have the tools to handle the anxiety and I know how to manage it. So it's but I'm learning, and so many more women are like, oh my god, I don't know what's going on. I mean, my hair thinned a bit. Like I lost it, but I did notice that a majority of the hair loss was after I went through radiation for the breast cancer. So people are like, oh, you don't lose your hair from radiation. Well, then maybe it was just
That's not true. That is individual too. So everybody is different. It depends on what's going on in your body. If you have other underlying conditions, you could have a thyroid issue that's been not diagnosed. And that in and of itself will cause anxiety, depression, things like that. So, and a lot of
exactly
times we go to the doctor and we say, I'm not feeling well, and they tell you you're fine, and you're not fine because you know your
right,
body, and they
right,
send you out anyway. And so you gotta do what works for you. And it sounds like you found something amazing in the process, and that's why you're out here helping other women. So uh, I just want to go back to the breast cancer. So getting that diagnosed is never easy. And even though they may tell you that you have good outcomes, expected outcomes, it doesn't change all those thoughts that go into your head. So I'm a two-time cancer survivor. So I know that that panic mode your body just goes into. Like it's almost like, I tell people online all the time, people think it can't happen to them until it does,
right.
and then that shock of like this can't be real. But I have a girlfriend, and um this year, post COVID, many more people are being diagnosed with cancer because their immunity was down. So that's no secret, right? So
Right.
they were at higher risk for exposure because of the immunity issue, more colon cancer, more breast cancer, everything. So I've had 4 friends diagnosed this year,
Wow.
and they all had, really good outcomes, but one. And she is a breast cancer survivor. So she had the total mastectomy, had the reconstruction.
Mhm.
They didn't get it all. So she had to go back and have like another mastectomy, bilateral mastectomy. And then it's 2 years now. They said that it was in she thought her sciatica was bothering her, and it's in her spine.
Oh,
So her prognosis wasn't good. but I really do believe everyone has the ability to heal themselves, because I do believe in that God. So I try to encourage her and stuff like that. But I know what support means in that.
Yes.
Well, and having that family. So you did have your family there to support you. And does that help? It does. But it's hard to talk about for women, I think. I think it's just telling people, I think it's hard. I think that society plays too much into our body and how that contributes to our femininity,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
It
So
does.
even if we're having a lumpectomy or something, it's a part of us. And it somehow makes us feel devalued sometimes. So we do have to work through that concept too. Not everyone, but a lot of people do feel that. I mean, I knew someone that lost a little piece of his finger and really struggled with that because
Right.
he just felt like he wasn't whole. So that brings anxiety. So you had quite a lot on your plate, and you're here now because you're stronger than, those disease processes. You're meant to survive. So
I learned so much about myself, and people think I'm crazy because I say, I'm grateful that I experienced cancer. I don't say that I don't own the cancer because it's I don't want to make it a part of me. I experienced it. And I was really lucky. I was very lucky with the diagnosis. I had a very, very rare breast cancer. I had Paget's disease, so it appeared as a rash on my nipple. So when the doctor had said, "Oh, I don't like the way that looks. How long has that been there? I'm going to give you some cream. It's usually something like eczema or skin related." He said, "But in a very small chance, it could be breast cancer." I was like, "What? What do you mean?" So I went back for the biopsy, and something inside me knew that day that it was going to be cancer. I don't know why, it's just something that I knew. And then I got the diagnosis, and he said that it's Paget's disease. He said, but this particular cancer typically does not come back. So I was, again, something to be very grateful for. Yes, I have cancer, but he said, we'll cure you. And it typically doesn't come back. And then I had an MRI, and 80 or 90% of women that have Paget's have a very aggressive cancer inside the breast. I did not have that. So I was very, very lucky. It was caught very, very early. Um, when they removed my nipple, the areola, and a little bit more of my breast, they took out some milk ducts that had cysts on them. There was no cancer. All my tests came back fine. I could not bring myself to look at my breast.
you know
It, it
one of
was it was really hard, and not that I felt like something. I can't look at a scratch. I can't look at blood. I just can't. It took me a long time because I had to process what happened first. I'm not ashamed. I didn't get it fixed. I still don't have a nipple or an areola. I was like, nah, I don't need it. I'm good the way I am now. I'm okay with that. Everybody's different in their decisions, but it just what you were talking about kind of sprung to me. I don't feel any less of a woman, but I do remember feeling like I can't look at this right now. I have to finish processing that I have breast cancer, and there's no breast cancer in my family at all.
I don't mean that you feel like less than a woman. You don't feel whole is a better question, and is a better way of saying it. And the reason I say that is because our sexuality is connected to our breasts,
Yes.
and our buttocks, and our ability to have children. So all I ever wanted to do was a mother, and I had ovarian cancer at 15.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
and they said to me, they wanted to do and I wasn't a nurse back then. They wanted to remove everything. They wanted to do hysterectomy. And I said, no. I said, that would mean I can't have children, and that's all I want. But nobody counseled me at that time and told me that just going through the treatments I had no one spoke to me about harvesting my eggs, nothing. And then later, when I was trying to have children, I couldn't get pregnant, and I just didn't understand it. And then thyroid has something to do with it. So they said it's probably the thyroid, and then the doctor looked at my records, and he said, "Didn't they tell you?" I said, "No, they never did," because they couldn't find anything wrong physically. They said, "We don't understand why." And then I got PCOS, which also makes it difficult to get pregnant. So, which is cysts on your ovaries all the time. So,
Okay.
I had all these things that were just like against those odds. But I remember when, like, I didn't feel traumatized by the cancer because I knew that I was going to make it. I'm just that get back up girl. But
Right.
I know what it did to me to find out I couldn't have children. It did change me in a way because
Of course.
that is associated with womanhood. And I somehow felt like something was wrong with me because I couldn't do this basic thing that other women could do. And I don't usually share that with them. Now God does bless you in other ways
Mhm.
because I raised my husband's children. This is both of our second marriage. Like, they're part of my life. So we're, extended family. So
Right.
I have them in my life. I had the opportunity to be a mom, a stepmom, where other people don't have that. We could have adopted. There are other things, and I just opted not because I am a nurse. So, pediatrics is a possibility. So,
Yeah. And,
so I do pediatric care now. So, um, but what I'm saying is when some part of you is not whole in the sense that it's seen by others, because people do unfortunately play up physical appearance in a
right.
way that they shouldn't. When people look at us, their first impression is of how we look, not what kind of person we were, if we were smiling, if we were hunched, or they're looking at our appearance, and that's how we're being judged. And I think society as a whole puts too much on those physical characteristics. So, and even the stigmas with mental health and everything else.
Yes.
So I know that as a nurse, when someone's going home and they have a colostomy, or they have those surgeries, that's the first thing we have to look for to see if they're able to actually physically look at it. And if not, we're hesitant to send them home.
Right. And I remember, I have contacts, but I don't see very well without them. So I learned how to shower, and I'm short, so the mirror in the bathroom is wouldn't show my breast. And if I turned around, because we have a bathroom in the bedroom, if I turned, the mirror was on the opposite side, so I wouldn't have been able to see. And I was good. I was like, okay, I can put a bra on without looking. I'm 54 years old, so I was able to do that, or I was 52 at the time. And I remember going for my first um, treatment for radiation. And I saw every Monday, I saw the radiation oncologist. She sent the nurse in first. And I would talk to her, and she was an angel. I swear she was an angel. And she's like, okay, let's take a look. And I said to her, yeah, I kind of haven't looked at it yet. And she's like, really? I'm like, I haven't been. And now, so this was October 4th. I had surgery August 24th. So it was over a month. And she said, okay. She said, well, I said, I can't bring myself to look at it. And she was so gracious, and she held my hand, And she said to me, it's time. And I said, I know. I said, I tried yesterday and I couldn't do it. She said, let's do it together. I said, okay. So she handed me a mirror. She held my hand. She said, take it slow. If you can't do it, just hand me back the mirror. So I said, okay. And I said, what does it look like? And I loved all my doctors, my team, because they met me where I was. I called it my boob. So, I didn't call, I said, so she said, she whispers and she says, it looks like a boob without a nipple. So I was like, okay. And I moved my gown and I was like, oh, it doesn't look so bad. So she goes, no. And she gave me a hug and she's like, I'm proud of you. And that was and that's what, I love the support that I got from her. I met her every week and we had great conversation. And that was the support that I needed. And my husband was a great support. He's like, don't rush it, whatever you need, take your time. You're going to be okay. So we need that support. And I found out a couple of weeks ago that one of my very good friends was just diagnosed with breast cancer. So
Wow.
I'm like, okay, let's take a deep breath. And one thing that I lived by was people say, oh, just take it one day at a time. You know what? Some days I couldn't take it one day at a time.
Hour by hour.
I take it moment by moment. And if that's all I can give right now, then that's all I can give. And I showed myself grace to feel the feels. And I talk about that in the book. I gave myself the space and the grace to feel the feels. When I was feeling not right, I would remove myself. I'd say to my husband or whatever, I just need to be alone for a little bit. And I would, go in my room and I would take a deep breath. Sometimes I would cry. Sometimes I wouldn't. Be like, what is it that I'm feeling? And I had to name it. Sad, angry, whatever it was. I had to name it. Because this way, then I can heal it. I can deal with it.
Hmm.
And I was able to do that. And again, I went back to my gratitude practice. What am I grateful for? I'm grateful because I know that I'm going to come out on the other side of this. I'm grateful. And there were days where it was so overwhelming. And I would all of a sudden just have this wave of sadness or anxiety flood my body. And I'd be like, I need a timeout. And I would be like, okay, I'm feeling anxious or sad, and do my gratitude practice. And I would be like, God, thank you, thank you, thank you because I didn't think about cancer for half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It was a few hours or however much time it was. I didn't think about cancer. When I wasn't thinking about cancer, I was me, and I was laughing or joking or doing cooking or cleaning or whatever, spending time with my family. But I wasn't thinking about it, because when I was thinking about cancer, it was, okay, this is what I'm dealing with right now. And it didn't always necessarily mean it put me in a bad place, but I certainly wasn't happy when I was thinking about the cancer. So if I went a few hours and I didn't think about it, I had 3 hours where I wasn't in fight or flight mode, because that's where cancer put you. It puts you in fight or flight mode when you're thinking, at least that was
But it
that
puts
was
you
me.
just in a bad space. It's hard
Yeah.
to be present when you don't know what tomorrow brings.
Right.
So I get that. I totally get that. My mother-in-law, she's in her 80s. She post-COVID, I told you a lot of people getting diagnosed. So she's always had a history of breast cancer. So she got through that last year. And then we took her for her test. She's very into the preventative medicine. God bless her. So she went for the colonoscopy. I'm sorry, I'm half asleep today. I don't know what's the matter with me. It's a beautiful day here, and usually it's after all the rain we've been having, earthquakes, um, crazy stuff. So she had the colonoscopy, and I think she was gonna fall off her chair when he said it's positive, you have cancer, and she had to have a lot removed.
Wow. I
from
just
from
had a
the
colonoscopy the other day. Oh,
ascending all the way to the transcending. She had and she had great doctors. So, and I know I'm so grateful that we were able to be there for her, you know, and that, she's a champ. She got through it. She's a worrywart to begin with. And she's one of those people that uses Google that I'm always laughing at online. I'm like, stay off that Google. What are you doing? She
right.
gets locked out of her porthole. She's in it so much. And I said, you can't do this. She goes, I can't get in my damn porthole. I said, stay out of it. But God love her, and my husband's like, what are, if she would just listen to what the doc says. I said, yeah, but you're there and you think you're listening. I said, but your mind is somewhere else altogether. So
Right.
even when you're out with your family or your friends, your mind is still there. Like, how am I going to get through this today? It's
100%.
always
Yeah.
it's always pressing on your minds. And people are always going to ask you how you doing, and you want to tell them I feel like shit, but you can't,
Right.
because you feel
Right.
like you need to be strong for them too. So there's a lot of mixed emotions that go with this. So let's get into the EFT a little bit. So
Okay.
do you coach groups? Because it's sad. So I want people to have an understanding of all the good that's come out of this as well, because
It,
you've totally turned this around. You wrote two books. You just did your second book. Now you're teaching other people how to do EFT and manage their emotions and get past those limiting beliefs. And you're teaching them about gratitude, which half of the world doesn't have enough of. So
definitely not.
tell me about what that's like working with those people, and being able to calm that part of them that is stressed out, that is going through all those things, to be able to teach them tools that you learned at a difficult time, and now take that and turn it around into something beautiful to help somebody else.
Okay. That's a great question. I love this. I work one-on-one with clients. I also do Zoom classes. We still call them classes, workshops. I do it through Zoom because one thing that I found with my practice, and when COVID hit and you couldn't be in the same space, I was doing all of my sessions through Zoom. It turns out that people liked it better because they were in the safe space of their home. I found that they were more vulnerable. They were more transparent. They were
Mm,
more at ease with saying, whatever it was that was bothering them, or as you talk through it, they were just more forthcoming, which is much better than I don't want anybody holding anything back, because you need to heal. And in order to heal, you have to be forthcoming. So that really is a great tool. I like working over video because it gives a sense of peace and stability to the client that I'm working with. So we'll sit and I give homework before, sit and really close your eyes and, no distractions for 5 to 10 minutes, take a few deep breaths and really ask yourself, and literally say, self, what is it that I need to heal? And write down whatever comes to your mind. And it could be a bunch of different things. And then just spend a few moments focusing on each separate thing and see which one really, where you feel it in your gut. That's why you need to be in just a quiet space for a few minutes with no distractions to say which one. Oh, yeah, oh, I'm anxious about this. I'm anxious about this. I'm anxious about this, or I'm fighting with this one, or whatever it is. And just whichever one feels right, because our higher selves know, our intuition, our higher selves knows exactly what needs to be healed in what order. So I always use this story. I had a client and she did her homework and she comes to the session and she says, all right, Teresa, I'm ready. She says, I want to work on the fact that I can't get back to my plant-based diet, which I know is better for my body. I feel better when I do that, but I just can't do it. And my intuition is going off and I'm like, no, that's not it. I'm like, okay, let's go. Now, I didn't say that because it's not my place to say. So we start tapping. We're going through it. We're going, and all of a sudden she burst into tears, which happens all the time, right? When you're on a healing process and you become raw and vulnerable, you're going to cry. And she says, I'm just not worthy. I said, that's what it is. It's not about the plant-based diet. It's about the fact that you don't feel worthy to be healthy, to be thin, or whatever it is. And we went through it. So that was her higher self letting her know this is what needed to be healed. But, we have so much of our conscious mind that is, it's like the devil in the back seat,
Mm.
right? So the devil's saying, oh no, this is what you need to, because the devil is what you're trying to get rid of, right? The devil doesn't want you to see all of that, what really needs to be healed, because then he can't do his job. So when you work with me, it's very, very, it's not cookie cutter. We figure out what it is that you need, and what you need only, not what anybody else needs. And we go down that path. And sometimes, you're in a session and we don't do EFT. We'll do something else. We'll do a visualization. We'll work on some positive affirmations. We'll work on building the skills for you to get on and create new habits. So it's all based on what the client wants, what the client needs. And then I don't heal you. I teach you how to heal yourself. EFT heals you. I just show you. I'm just the one that says, okay, this is what we're going to do, and follow along with me. People get wrapped up in, where do I tap? Is it this? Oh no, I missed the eyebrow point. I missed the under the nose. It doesn't matter. EFT is so forgiving. It doesn't matter. You'll need me for, a few sessions. So